On today's Locked On Jayhawks, can Allen Fieldhouse just find that magic one more time? Can KU extend their lengthy senior day streak against the Arizona Wildcats?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of LOJ, we're previewing Kansas and Arizona. Will the senior day streak continue for Kansas? Over 40 right now. We'll give a little bit of a send-off to all the seniors on the KU roster. Talk about the headlines of the game, the opponent scouting report, what the Wildcats are bringing to town from Arizona as a new member of the Big 12, keys to the game for KU, players to watch, and so much more on this episode of the show, which is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 wins at FanDuel. So KU takes on Arizona, a Saturday afternoon game against the Wildcats. And I guess headline number one, you could say, if you want to include both teams, is that this is a new matchup in the Big 12 between these two schools. And certainly when Arizona joined the Big 12, this was thought to be, okay, you're putting this at the end of the season to make a primetime matchup. Could this determine who wins the Big 12 or gets a share of the Big 12? And no, that's not really the case. Arizona's had a good year in the Big 12, though their non-con was a little bit lacking. Kansas clearly has not. And so, it's interesting that this game that was hyped up about these schools joining in kind of, fluffs aside a little bit there. But the other big headline coming into this one is the senior day streak for Kansas. It is sitting at 41 straight senior day victories for KU. And there have been some close calls, right, that they found a way to win. Certainly the one that, it wasn't actually a close call in the end. I think Kansas actually won by double digits. But the game that I think everybody thought the streak was going to end was the game, what would have been 4 years ago, in 2021. So it was the like post-COVID year where there still weren't like full fans in the crowd, and KU was playing that Baylor team that ended up winning the national title. And obviously that KU team, wasn't a great KU team, and they ended up winning that game on senior day. So maybe Allen Fieldhouse has one more in it, can get through, some extra magic here in this one for KU against Arizona, but 41 straight. And this team has already lost several other streaks this season. There are other streaks that, seem to be broken soon as well, like the seed. I mean, I guess it's possible if Kansas wins this one and reels off 2-3 wins in the Big 12 tournament, maybe they do work back up to the 4 line. I don't think so, but you're probably going to see that stretch end. Like, are you going to see Kansas lose in the first round for the first time in a long time? I don't know. We'll see what happens with some of those different streaks, the amount of losses, and will they get to 20 wins? All those sorts of things to a chance to get to in this one too. But that's the big one with the senior day streak. Can they keep that going and at least keep, one streak intact? Now, the seniors who are going to be celebrating senior day here in this one, Hunter Dickinson, he gave a speech last year at senior day, so I don't know that he'll be giving another one here, but Hunter Dickinson obviously has been a very productive player for 2 years, and it's one of those things where you feel like if only they could do it over again and how they would build the roster around Hunter for these 2 seasons, maybe Bill Self wouldn't, change up some of those things that he would need to, but regardless, Hunter still has produced at a very high level, and so, he'll be celebrated. KJ Adams, who has been certainly a heart and soul of, or tried to be of the KU program. And it is unfortunate that KJ is not on a better team, because if KJ was playing a slightly smaller role and was on a good team, this dude would be beloved by Bill Self, by the fans, right? Like in the same way that people loved like Jamari Traylor, right? It's just given the lack of team success and given the role and stuff, there have been questions there. But I hope KJ gets a big round of applause, because I have, enjoyed watching him. I know at times it leads to spacing issues, which are not enjoyable to watch it. I'm trying to do senior send-offs, and here I am, working to the other side of things. But yeah, KJ provides energy, man, and there's never been a question about if he's going to try his hardest to win the game. With Dajuan Harris, you're talking about a guy who was the starting point guard for your national title team. And again, with Dajuan, in the same way that Hunter and KJ, probably has been into a role or a roster fit around him that hasn't benefited him down the back end of his career. But I hope we can look back in, 10, 15 years, and you look back at the plays he made in the second half defensively that kickstarted some transition plays and some of the things he did in that national title game and run for KU in 2022. Shaquille Moore didn't get to see enough of this season, but some of the games he was in, Kansas was a really good defense when he was in there. Then you have Zeke Mayo, and Zeke getting to come back home. And I know there's been some, a little bit of tumbling lately between the DM stuff and him struggling in the last couple games. But overall, Zeke has provided a great season for KU, and it really is a great story of a kid, working his way up at South Dakota State to earning the opportunity to come to his local university in the blue blood that is Kansas. And he's still put together a season that if you would have said he was going to be averaging, this many points and rebounds and assists on this percentage shooting to this point in the season, you would have gladly taken that. And so it's been fun watching him in a KU uniform this year. And then the last one, I guess, question mark here, Diggy Coit could have another year with the JUCO thing. We'll see what they do about him in senior day. He's been playing well of late too. Will he start in this game, right? What will the starting lineups be? But I think Diggy Coit certainly could have another year in him at KU. And I think the KU staff, and I would certainly enjoy seeing Diggy Coit another season at KU playing next to Diggy or Darren Peterson, which we talked a little bit about on yesterday's episode with Nick Schwert. Thank you, Everydayers, who already caught it. The other big headline coming into this one is the seeding that is available for the Big 12 tournament. So this is something where Kansas can't work themselves into the top 4 spots where they can, work themselves into a first round bye at this point in time. And for Arizona, they have already clinched being a first round bye with a top 4 spot. But for Arizona, you want to maximize out at possibly the 2 seed, right? And from the Kansas perspective, you can go no higher than 5th. But right now you'd be the 6th seed. Baylor, who has the same record as you, beat you head to head. So for Kansas, can you at least, finish with a winning record in conference play? Can you get that 5 seed or that 6 seed, which, sorry, I think I said they could get to the 5. They could get to the 6 seed. Right now they're the 7 seed with Baylor. Can you get to the 6 seed? And I don't know what that's worth, because you don't totally know who the matchups behind you are going to be, but I don't know. I guess it's something headed into this one. Okay, Arizona, what they bring to the table. Wildcats enter at 20-10 on the season. That's kind of interesting that they're only a game better than Kansas, and yet they're viewed as one of the best teams in the Big 12, but it's just on how the season has gone. They were a team that was figuring themselves out in the early going of the season and now has become a much better team in Big 12 play, whereas with Kansas, it was the opposite. It was, they're a really good team. They beat Duke, they beat Michigan State, and now it's falling apart in Big 12 play. And so, it does matter how you're playing at this time of year, and Arizona's certainly playing at a better rate, even though the overall records are pretty similar there. They just beat Arizona State, a fun one, 113-110. And prior to that, though, they were not playing much better just for a brief stretch. They had lost 4 of their last 6 games before that win over Arizona State. Now, Ken Palm does have them as a top 15 team nationally with a top 20 offense and a top 30 defense. So it's just a balanced team that's good overall. As far as the personnel, it's basically 3 main guards for the backcourt. Caleb Love, who very recognizable name in college basketball. Obviously, I guess there's a storyline going back to the 2022 national title game with him matching up on the imagine if you would have said in 2022 when that national title was happening that we'd get to see Caleb Love play for Arizona in the year 2025 back against Dajuan Harris. Anyway, Love's averaging 16.4 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game, 3.6 assists per game. Low volume, or low efficiency, I should say. High volume in terms of shots. Only 38% from the floor, 31 from 3. But it's you rarely get games, I feel where, I don't know, maybe this is wrong, but my notion of watching it is you don't get games where Caleb Love shoots 38% and 31 from 3. It's either he shoots 50% or he shoots 26%. It's that's the average of what the two are. He's either red hot or he's ice cold. Then you look at Jaden Bradley, 6'3" guard, 11.6 points, 4 assists, 2 steals per game, 46% from the floor. He is under 30 from 3. That'll be a common theme here. 6'4" guard, KJ Lewis, about 11 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.1 stocks per game. A lot of blocks and steals for this kid. 45% from the floor. Only 18%, though, from 3, but still a good player overall. On the wing, though, this guy is who you need to watch out for from three. Anthony Del Orso, 6'6" wing, smaller role, but 40% from three on high volume. So got to watch out for him on the outside. 6'6" Oakland transfer on that team that upset Kentucky last year. Trey Townsend, I don't believe related to Curtis. He plays the 3 and the 4 for Arizona, and he's had a solid season. 8 points, 4 rebounds per game, 48% from the floor. Then they have a freshman, Carter Bryant, who's being picked as like a possible first-round pick in some NBA mock drafts. But it's been a bit contentious among some of the mock drafters and probably among some Arizona fans with the lack of playing time, thinking that maybe he should play even more. He is averaging 6.5 points, 4 rebounds on 49% from the floor, 36 from 3. That is in 18 minutes per game, but those have gone up at least a tad lately. And then playing the 4 and the 5, they'll play some 2 big basketball, but they'll also use him as a kind of small ball 5. That's Toby Awaka. He's a 6'8", 250-pound bowling ball. 8.5 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, excellent rebounder, 64% from the floor. He has taken 5 threes. He's made 2 of them, so 40%, but that's very low volume that you don't really bank on that beating you in the game. So sometimes they'll play Bryant at the 4 and Awaka at the 5, and I really like that lineup for Arizona, but other times they'll play 2 big basketball, and Henry Visar has been excellent for Arizona. He's a 7-footer, 235 pounds. Their main 7-footer, Krivas, was injured. I think he broke his foot or something back in December. And so Visar's been thrusted into a larger role, and he's been really good. 9.3 points per game, 5 rebounds, 1.2 blocks, and that's in just under 20 minutes per game. And he's doing it on 60% from the floor, 34% from 3 on decent volume for a center, and 71% from the free throw line. And in Big 12 play, he's closer to 11 points per game. So he's playing his best ball. He does have a little bit of Zeke Mayo going on where some of his road numbers, though, drop a decent amount from where his home numbers are. So keep an eye on that. All right, what does Arizona do well? Where do they struggle? Keys to the game, players to watch, all that next on Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your bets into a same-game parlay. You can, if you want to, if you believe that all of a sudden they're going to hit a cool run or something, you can get Kansas at pretty good odds to win the Big 12 tournament over at FanDuel. So right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com. You can join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. So I'm going to be out of town this weekend. I've got a trip with some high school buddies back home, and so I will not be able to do a postcast episode on Saturday. I will be back Sunday night, and we'll get something up for you Sunday night into Monday morning with the postcast with whatever happens for KU Arizona. Maybe I'll throw up a YouTube short or something on there based on what happens, but don't be expecting the postcast right after. I know we normally get it with probably about an hour after the game every time. Sorry, that won't be the case this time, but be on the lookout because this weekend it will be coming or into Monday at some point. All right, matchups, keys to the game. Before we get into that, what does Arizona do well? What do they struggle with? What they do well, this is a team that plays very, very fast. They get over 14 transition points per game during conference play. That rate's in the 96th percentile nationally. It's very good. Elite offensive rebounding team, top 15 nationally. In Big 12 only games, they're second. And actually, over the last 5 games, they're in the 99th percentile nationally in offensive rebound rate. They get to the free throw line at a high rate. Also, over the last 5 games, 99th percentile nationally. They make a high rate of their 2-point shots. They make their free throws, both top 2 in Big 12 only games. Very good passing team. They get a lot of assists, and part of that is with their transition play. They get a lot of blocks and steals defensively, so they cause chaos there. They're 88th percentile during conference play in Hakeem rate, which is basically block rate plus steal rate. And then they are solid. I wouldn't say elite, but they're at least solid at avoiding turnovers, defensive rebounding, 2-point offense or 2-point defense, in avoiding sending other teams to the free throw line. Now, where they've struggled, as good as the offense has been, it's not been because of their shooting. It is honestly amazing how good their offense is, given the fact that they rank 295th in the country in 3-point percentage. They're shooting just 31.6% from 3, but they've been such an efficient offense. And the reason why, they get out in transition, right? So you're able to get quicker buckets. They have bigs who can score at the rim. They have games where they can get hot at the very least from three, because again, it's kind of a hit or miss thing for them. So definitely a weird way to go about it, but also they get to the free throw line and they make their free throws. And that's the thing with like Kansas, where it's like, okay, Kansas isn't shooting a lot of threes. Well, if they were getting, a bunch of offensive rebounds, which Arizona does, they could be more efficient offensively. Or if they got to the free throw line a bunch and made them at a high rate, they could be better offensively. Arizona does both those things that are kind of requirements if you're not going to be a good shooting team. Now, the Arizona defense, it only ranks 8th in Big 12 only games, so been kind of middle of the pack there. And it's super interesting in their recent games. Over the last 5 games Arizona's played, they rate in the 99th percentile nationally in O rating. They're in the 2nd percentile nationally in D rating. So over the last 5 games, they're like the most elite of elite offenses and like the most bad of the bad defenses, which is kind of interesting. They also don't really force many turnovers, despite the fact that they do get a good amount of steals. All right, keys to the game for KU. I would say forced turnovers of Arizona, because the Wildcats have lost 6 of their 8 highest turnover rate games, but Kansas doesn't force them. So I'm not going to pick that as a key to the game, but just know I would if they did. Number 1 is defend the paint. Arizona is in the 91st percentile for paint points per game. 36.6 paint points per game. Houston only had 18 last game out of comparison against Kansas. Arizona is also in the 81st percentile in 2-point percentage, so they shoot them at a good rate, obviously. They're also in the 93rd percentile during conference-only play for the amount of their shots that they get coming at the rim, while obviously making them, at a strong clip. And so in games where Arizona is held to 50% or lower on 2-point shots, they're 3-6. They're 17-4 on the flip side. So if you can, put up some resistance against their 2-point shooting, it's going to make life difficult, which makes sense because they really struggle shooting threes. Duh. Number 2 is defend Caleb Love and force him into one of his inefficient games. This has been the thing for Caleb Love throughout his collegiate career. He'll have games where he'll win you the game single-handedly. He'll score 30 points. He'll, hit every important shot. He'll make all these tough threes. Other games where he might shoot you out of a game. You think like the Sweet 16 for Arizona last year, in which they lost to Clemson. And so in their losses this season, Arizona is only shooting 23% from 3. That is the worst in the country for teams in losses, according to CBB Analytics. Now, this is an Arizona team that doesn't have, I would say, enough dudes from 3 to where okay, you look at it and it's at the center position. Yeah, Visar has been a good 3-point shooter, but maybe you're going to get a couple up in an individual game. Carter Bryant has been a good 3-point shooter, but he's playing 18 minutes per game, right? Anthony Del Orso, great 3-point shooter. He's also somebody who's not playing, 35 minutes per night necessarily, right? And so if Caleb Love is feeling it from 3, all of a sudden Arizona is going to be a proficient enough 3-point shooting team, right? But if he's not, they don't have enough requisite options around that usually get it going, right? In an individual game, of course, anything can happen. But here's what's interesting. Going back to that idea that how Caleb Love goes from 3 really carries how Arizona is going to go from 3. I mentioned Arizona as a team, 23% from 3 in their losses. Well, Caleb Love is shooting 38% from 3 in Arizona wins this year. Very good. And that's on high volume. But in Arizona losses, Caleb Love is only shooting 19.5% from 3-point range. That is very bad. And there is a little bit of a chicken and egg here where it's like, did they lose because Caleb Love, wasn't shooting well from 3? Or did Caleb Love not shoot well from 3, because they lost? I guess I don't know. Does that doesn't seem to make sense coming out of my mouth now. But anyway, he's going to keep chucking no matter what. And so if he's not feeling it, it's not going to be a situation where, some guys come in the game, they start 0 for 2, and then it's like, I'm going to be a little trigger shy. It's not my night. I don't feel it. Not Caleb Love, man. He's going to miss his first 2, and if he does, if he makes the first 2, he's going to shoot 6 more. If he misses his first 2, he's going to shoot 6 more. It's going to keep coming out. So the fact that if you can play good defense on him, make him inefficient, it's going to be even more inefficient because the volume's going to be there too. And you look at it, last game, he goes 4 for 7 from 3. They win. Game before, he goes 2 for 10 from 3. They lose by 17. Game before that, he goes 6 of 12 from 3, and they win by 17. In the Kansas State and Houston back-to-back losses, he went 1 of 15 from 3. So you can see the correlation there. All right, number 3 is make your threes if you're Kansas. You're playing at home. You're playing on senior night. You're playing against a team who's going to play some 2 big basketball. You're going to have chances. Make them. In fact, on the season, Arizona has given up one of the highest rates in the country in 3-point volume, basically, per shot attempt against them. And they give them up from all over, from the corner, above the break, from the top, whatever. So over the last 5 games, opponents are hitting 45% of corner threes against Arizona. And we'll see if Kansas can take advantage. I think part of Kansas having a good 3-point shooting night is getting Zeke Mayo and Rylan Griffin going again. Right, so Zeke Mayo went 5 of 10 from 3 in the Oklahoma State game. Over the last 2 games since, he is just one, or I think, would that be 3 games? He is just 1 of 10 from 3 in the 3 games since. So you got to get him going again, right, if you want to win this game. Rylan Griffin had a good game against Tag, actually shooting, but he was 0 for 2 from 3 against Houston. Need to get him going again. And obviously for Zeke Mayo, he's been better at home. 43% from 3 at home, 31% from 3 on the road. So that would hopefully bode well to this happening, but it didn't really carry over to the Texas Tech game, which was at home. So you got to get those guys going again, because you're going to have 3-point opportunities, and those are your best snipers and marksmen, I guess David Coit too, that can try to take advantage of that in this game. All right, who are the players to watch? Maybe we just mentioned some of them. What's the player matchup to watch? Get to that next. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Our episode of the show today is brought to you by the Armada Team of the Week from Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On college basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets, these guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. I've gone over a couple other teams of the week so far this week, so let's pick another new one. I get ever dares if you already caught them all. Let's go with BYU as our team of the week so far. It's been 1 game so far. But did you know BYU has low-key won 6 consecutive games? And what they did this week is they beat Iowa State 88-85 in double overtime. And that was not a game played at home for them. That was a game in Hilton Coliseum in which they won by 3 in double overtime. So we're going to go with BYU, who's playing their best ball of the season right now. They got a top 15 offense. I know I'm going to be kind of keeping an eye on them for the NCAA tournament. And, they just can dice you up and hit a bunch of threes from the outside. And I don't really know how to make a metaphor to compare that to the Nissan Armada, but I'll tell you what, they go forth and conquer just like the Armada. And it's clear that our team of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of the Nissan's outstanding vehicle. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, continuing on, finishing up here on Locked On Jayhawks, talking a little bit about the players to watch, player matchups, and who could be on the high on the go-off meter for KU. Let's start here with the player matchups. I think it has to be Dajuan Harris versus Caleb Love. I mean, you're talking about 2 very experienced guards that have that past in the 2022 National Championship, going back to the idea that if Kansas can make Caleb Love inefficient and have one of those bad shooting games, it's going to help them win. Well, Dajuan Harris is probably going to draw a lot of the defense on him. And Caleb Love had a very inefficient game in that national title game in 2022 with, Dajuan Harris, among others, kind of defending him there. So I think that is the big matchup. And beyond that, can Dajuan Harris give you anything on offense? It feels like there have been too many times where you look up at the stat sheet and 0 points, 2 points. And there have been some games where Dajuan has scored, 15 points or whatever. But it's been a little... Not enough for this Kansas team needing more scoring. The other one that I want to make mention of is Hunter Dickinson against Henry Visar. Does Visar's shooting ability to stretch the floor a little bit, does that give Dickinson and the KU defense a little bit of troubles? And then on the other side, with Dickinson on offense, Visar is one of the few bigs who can kind of match him with size. He's a little bit smaller, but he can at least be close there. And on CBB Analytics, they have this all-in-one metric that looks at offensive value, defensive value, or overall value. And in that stat, Visar ranks in the 99th percentile for defensive value in the country. So you're talking about a good defender who's getting 1.2 blocks per game in about 20 minutes per game, right? If that was closer to 30 minutes per game, he'd be closer to 2 blocks per game. He can be a good enough defender on Hunter that if Hunter has a bit of a slower offensive game, where does Kansas look to for offense? And Arizona doesn't really have to double the post. So what does Kansas do to overcome that? Or can Hunter just say, hey, I don't care that you're around my size or that you're this good defender. This is senior day for me. I'm going to have one of those crazy performances where I just go off and kind of carry the team. High in the go-off meter here. In looking at some recent box scores for Arizona, the players that have scored a lot, I would say, It's like 3 and 4 men, so like forwards, I guess, that can shoot, which KU doesn't really have. So I don't know that you would look to there. And then scoring guards were the guys who scored on Arizona. Which I guess scoring guards, they're scoring guards because they always score. So maybe that's just not like a specific Arizona thing. But anyway, who would be the scoring guards for KU? Because they don't really have a ton of those either. Would that be Diggy Coit? We talked about the 3-point shooting opportunities against him. Diggy coming off the great game against Houston. Maybe he plays a bigger role in this game. So we'll go with Diggy Coit. Why not? Love Diggy Coit. And then let's go with Zeke Mayo. Bouncing back on senior day. This one's going to mean a lot to him. Playing here for possibly the final time in Lawrence. I know they floated around the fifth-year thing. We'll see if that ends up happening, but possibly the final time for Zeke Mayo playing in front of his family. And with everything he's gone through, it would be cool for him to, keep that senior day streak alive if he can have a big game from three. And he has been, overall in the season, your best three-point shooter, even though there is a bit of a rut over these last couple games. Maybe even Rylan Griffin, who knows? But let's go Diggy Coit and Zeke Mayo for KU officially. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. Again, we'll have a postcast KU Arizona later in the weekend, and we'll see you then. We'll also get some KU Big 12 tournament content into next week. See ya.